Dad says if you disappeared tomorrow, no one would even notice. That's what my 13-year-old niece said while unboxing the $850 phone I had just given her for her birthday. She was laughing. So were the other kids. My brother, her father, chuckled loudest. Her mother shook her head like she was so amused by the harmless joke. 30 people in that backyard. Balloons, cake, music, and not one of them looked shocked. Not one person said, "Hey, that's not okay." They all just smiled, except me. I stood there, holding a plate of half-melted strawberry shortcake, and nodded. I didn't cry. I didn't throw the phone. I didn't ask if they really thought so little of me after everything I'd done for them. I just smiled like it didn't hurt. Then I tapped twice on my phone, first to lock the banking app, second to disable every card tied to my account. No more groceries. No more utilities. No more auto payments on the car I leased for my brother 3 years ago when his credit couldn't get him a bicycle. No more college fund deposits for my niece. No more emergency bailouts. No more covering short months just until Friday. I left the party early. No scene. No explanations. Just said I was tired, gave my niece a kiss on the forehead, and wished her a happy birthday. Like her words hadn't just confirmed the truth I'd been afraid to face for years. That night, I packed a single black backpack, laptop, passport, cash, 2 changes of clothes. I left my apartment keys on the counter, canceled the lease, deleted my family's contacts, and disappeared before sunrise. No note, no warning, just the backpack. Inside it, along with the charger cables and toothbrush, was a folder, a sealed envelope labeled in bold black ink. Since you wouldn't notice if I disappeared, here's what you'll Mississippi. I left it on my brother's kitchen table, next to the stack of bills I used to pay for him. I wasn't supposed to be the one who held it all together. Growing up, my brother Jordan was the golden one. Charismatic, athletic, charming in a way that made people excuse everything. My mom used to joke, Naomi gets straight A's, but Jordan gets people to clap for him. They clapped through every mess he made, through his suspended license, failed business ventures, his second DUI. Meanwhile, I got a pat on the head and a reminder to be responsible whenever I asked for help with college forms or rent during grad school. Still, I didn't push back. I figured that's what older sisters do. They lead by example. They clean up quietly. So I got a degree in finance, found a decent job, and started sending money home the minute I could. At first, it was small. $100 here, $200 there when Jordan just needed help with daycare. But it grew. By 27, I was paying part of his mortgage. By 29, I had taken over the car note for a vehicle I didn't drive, just to keep his family mobile. When his wife, Sierra, was between jobs, I covered groceries and utilities just for 2 months. 2 turned into 12. They said thank you, sometimes. But over time, the gratitude dried up. It wasn't a gift anymore, it was an expectation. They'd say things like, "You're lucky you don't have kids. You make more than we do, it's easy for you. You know family means helping without keeping score." But they kept score in their own way. Every holiday became a test. How much could I give? How quietly could I give it? And how easily could I be overlooked afterward? When I forgot to send my niece a birthday gift 2 years ago, Sierra told me she cried. Jordan texted, "You know how much she looks up to you." So this year I went big. The newest iPhone, a limited edition case, personalized accessories, and in return, she giggled at my existence like I was a joke her father had taught her to laugh at. Dad says if you disappeared tomorrow. That line didn't come from nowhere. It was inherited, absorbed, casually passed down over dinner tables. I helped fund. And I realized something. I wasn't a sister. I wasn't even family. I was just a bank account with a heartbeat. Until I decided to shut down the account and walk away, not just from the bills, but from the idea that love was something I had to buy to be respected. That birthday party wasn't the first red flag. It was just the first time they didn't bother to hide it. The signs had been there for years. Little things, paper cuts that didn't bleed until they all hit at once. Like the time I paid for Jordan's car repair and asked him to send me the invoice for records. He laughed and said, "You're not the IRS, Naomi. Relax." Or when Sierra casually mentioned in front of mutual friends that I was basically the safety net of the family, followed by a sip of wine and a smirk like she was proud of the arrangement. They made me the fallback plan, then mocked me for being stable. But the clearest sign? My niece. She'd always been sweet as a kid, but over the last year or two, something shifted. She stopped calling me Aunt Naomi. Started calling me Naomi instead, like I was an employee at a store. Asked me how much money I made. Said things like, "Dad says you're lucky to have us, or you'd be totally alone." At first, I blamed social media. Then I blamed her age. But that day at the party, I realized she was just repeating what she heard. She didn't come up with that on her own. She was mimicking the script her parents gave her. Jordan had built this narrative that I was bitter, that I was lonely, that I had no life outside of helping them. And the worst part, I had proven him right for a long time. Because I didn't set boundaries. Because I said yes to things that felt like no. Because I gave them everything, and they never thought I'd take anything back. Even my mom, before she passed, once said, "You can't expect people to thank you forever for doing the right thing." She meant it as wisdom, but it felt like a warning. Because what's the right thing when the people you're sacrificing for are teaching their child to laugh at your existence? And that's when it hit me. This wasn't just carelessness. It was contempt with a smile. They didn't forget I mattered. They actively decided I didn't. And once you realize you've been downgraded from person to provider, there's no unseeing it. So I made peace with what I had to do. Not out of rage, not out of revenge, but out of self-respect. Because if they could teach a child that my disappearance wouldn't matter, then I'd show them what my absence really looked like. When I left that party, I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I didn't even drive home angry. I just rolled the windows down and let the wind wash over me like water on old paint. By the time I got back to my apartment, the plan had already begun forming. I didn't want drama. I wanted distance. Permanent, untouchable distance. First, I logged into every banking and payment system I'd ever used to support them. My name was everywhere: utility bills, emergency funds, shared family apps. I disconnected all of it. I froze the credit card Jordan used for gas emergencies. I closed the joint account I'd opened to help manage my niece's future college fund. It had been sitting empty for months. They hadn't contributed a single dollar. Then I checked the lease on my apartment. Month to month. Easy. I found a short-term sublet 3 cities away. No questions asked, fully furnished. Paid the first 3 months up front in cash. Next, I clear my digital footprint. New email. New number. Password resets on everything. I logged out of all shared Netflix, Spotify, and Hulu accounts they still used under my name. And I changed those passwords too. Not out of pettiness. Out of precision. Because if I was going to disappear, I was going to do it completely. I backed up what I needed. Cleared out my personal storage unit. Dropped off 2 boxes at a donation center and sold off what I didn't want to carry. What I kept fit into 1 bag. Black backpack. Simple. Durable. Mine. Inside, I placed a few essentials. My passport. My laptop. A USB drive with all my financial records. 2 sets of clothes. A picture of my mother, taken before she got sick, smiling, arms around me at a park when I was 8. And 1 folder. Inside it, a single document titled, "Everything I paid for, so you don't have to wonder." It listed every major payment I'd ever made for my brother and his family. Dates. Amounts. Categories. I wasn't trying to shame them. I was just making it real. Because people like them never think the person holding them up will actually let go. They think the guilt will keep you around. But guilt is a leash, and I had just slipped out of mine. That night, before I left town, I dropped the backpack off at Jordan's house. Quietly. No knock. No text. Just placed it on the kitchen table, using the spare key I was never supposed to keep. I knew they'd find it, and when they opened it, they'd finally understand what it meant to joke about someone's disappearance, and then feel it. The morning after I vanished, I turned off my phone and left it in a drawer. It buzzed 22 times in the first hour. Jordan, Sierra, a few cousins, even my niece. I didn't answer a single one. Instead, I sat on a balcony 3 cities away, wrapped in a sweater, sipping black coffee I didn't have to share. I stared at a street I didn't recognize, full of people who didn't know me, and felt something strange settle in my chest. Relief. Not because they were finally calling, but because I no longer had to care. The silence I gave them wasn't punishment, it was education. And apparently the first lesson hit hard. According to a mutual friend who didn't know I'd left on purpose, Jordan showed up at my apartment the next day, banging on the door, shouting my name. He called the leasing office. They told him I'd moved out. No forwarding address. No contact info. He looked stunned, apparently. Said it wasn't like me. The next day, he opened the backpack. My friend said Sierra called her crying. Not because I was gone, but because the college fund was real and now closed. Then came the dominoes. Their utility bills bounced. The car payment was rejected. The phone lines went unpaid. Even the Hulu subscription cut out mid-show. It wasn't rage that followed. It was desperation dressed as concern. Voicemails rolled in like waves. Naomi, this isn't funny. Where are you? I know things got tense, but you can't just disappear. You didn't even say goodbye to your niece. We're family. They only remembered I was family after I stopped behaving like a servant. They only noticed I was gone after the flow of benefits dried up. My niece messaged me, too. A shaky apology. I didn't mean what I said. I was just repeating what Dad said. I'm sorry. Please come back. I felt a pang, a sharp, unexpected one, but I let it pass because I knew it wasn't her fault. She was just born into their script, and I'd lived in that script for too long, so I stayed gone. I built routines, bought groceries for one, found a new therapist, started writing again, opened a savings account that had only my name on it, learned how it felt to buy something without calculating who else I had to take care of first. And every day I didn't hear from them, I healed a little more. Eventually, the messages stopped. No apology, no real remorse. Just a silence that used to terrify me and now freed me. I didn't need closure. I didn't need payback. Because they finally understood the one thing they never respected before. What I gave them had value, and now it was gone. The collapse didn't happen all at once. It came in layers, cracks widening slowly, like a house built on sand after the waters pulled away. A month after I disappeared, Jordan and Sierra showed up to a family gathering without gifts, without smiles, and, according to my cousin Maya, without pride. People asked where I was. They said I was going through something. Maya told me later that Sierra tried to laugh it off. She's just emotional. You know Naomi, always sensitive. But when someone asked, didn't she pay for your car? Sierra's smile faltered. They didn't know what to say when people stopped laughing, because I wasn't there to make it easy anymore. Then came the job drama. Jordan lost a freelance contract after his credit score tanked from missed payments on the car I'd stopped covering. The car itself was repossessed one morning while he was inside a gas station. A friend caught the whole thing on video, him running out, coffee in hand, yelling at the tow truck. It made it to a local meme page with the caption, "When your family backup vanishes mid-fantasy." Sierra had to move back in with her sister when their rent jumped and they couldn't cover it. They sold the expensive gadgets. The iPhone I bought for my niece? Gone. The little luxuries they used to justify while I was paying the essentials? All vanished. But worse than the money was the exposure. People started talking. Because when the resource leaves, so does the illusion. Jordan had always painted himself as the big brother who held the family together. But people started seeing the truth. He was leaning on someone he disrespected. At church, people asked where Naomi was. At school, my niece had to explain why they moved again. The golden house of cards image my family had curated, stable, put together, blessed, it crumbled. And the black backpack? They never mentioned it again. But I know they read every word inside that envelope. Because when Maya went over to help Sierra pack, she saw it sitting in the closet. Untouched. Preserved like it still held a chance to be undone. But it couldn't be. Because that backpack didn't just contain a list. It contained a boundary. The first one I ever enforced. And like most firsts, it changed everything. People think walking away means you're running from something. But I wasn't running. I was finally walking toward something. Toward myself. I spent the first few weeks in silence, reading, journaling, sleeping without alarms, and eating food that didn't come from a takeout bag someone else charged to my account. It was strange at first hearing no one call my name, no one asking for anything, no guilt hovering over every breath I took. But eventually the quiet became a song, and I started to live. I picked up freelance consulting work, nothing heavy, just a few clients I chose on my own terms. One of them was a nonprofit that helped low-income women understand credit, budgeting, and financial abuse. I read the stories, helped rebuild ruined credit reports, and slowly realized I wasn't just healing. I was helping others heal, too. I found a cozy studio with hardwood floors and big windows. No shared utilities. No one else on the lease. Just mine. I hung up art for the first time. Cooked real meals. Even bought myself a new coffee maker. One no one else would break or borrow. I got a cat. Named her Indy. She doesn't ask for much. Just a quiet lap and a warm sunbeam. We get each other. One afternoon, while cleaning out the last of my storage bins, I found an old sticky note my mom had written me in college. Don't let them mistake your silence for weakness. Love, Mom. I cried for a long time when I read that. Not because I was sad, but because, in a way, she saw this moment long before I did. She knew what it meant to give without boundaries. And she knew the cost. I framed the note and placed it by my door. A reminder, silence isn't surrender. It's strategy. The last piece of closure came when I got a letter from my niece. Handwritten. I'm sorry for what I said. I didn't mean it. I was trying to sound cool. I didn't know what you did for us. I know now. She ended it with, I hope you're happy, Aunt Naomi. I miss you. I didn't write back. Not yet. But I kept the letter. Because maybe one day I'll tell her the whole story. Not to make her feel bad, but to help her learn something no one ever taught me. That being kind doesn't mean being used. And being family doesn't mean being furniture. It's been 6 months. The texts have stopped. The apologies faded. The panic quieted. And in their place, something bloomed. Not spite. Not victory. Space. Real, uninterrupted space. The kind you don't realize you need until you stop giving pieces of yourself away just to feel included. I still think about them sometimes. Not with anger. With clarity. I remember birthdays spent organizing gifts I paid for. Holidays where I stood behind camera, capturing moments I wasn't invited to be part of. Conversations where I laughed on cue, even when the joke was at my expense. But now, I go to cafes alone. Read books without checking my phone. I dance while folding laundry. I sit on the floor just because I can. I exist unobserved and unrequired. And it's the freest I've ever been. The black backpack I left behind, I know they still have it. Probably tucked away somewhere. Probably untouched but never forgotten. Because what I gave them that day wasn't just silence or absence. It was a mirror. Everything they found inside. The receipts. The list. The boundaries. The exit. That was the reflection of who I had been all along, and the line they never thought I'd draw. Maybe one day, they'll talk about it honestly. Maybe they'll tell the truth. But I'm not waiting for that. I'm building something else. My own story. A life not lived in the shadows of "you're so helpful," or "we'd be lost without you." They always said I was the quiet one, the soft one, the one who'd never walk away. They were right, until the day they finally gave me the reason to. I don't know where they are now. I don't ask, and I don't look back. Because when someone jokes that your disappearance wouldn't matter, there's only one thing left to do. Make it unforgettable. They didn't even get out of the car. I was 12. My legs were shaking, and I was clutching a trash bag full of my clothes, not a suitcase. A trash bag. We were parked outside a gray brick building that smelled like mildew and rules. A woman in a navy sweater was waiting at the door, clipboard in hand, pretending not to see the tears I kept blinking back. Mom looked at me from the driver's seat like I was a task she had finally crossed off her list. "You'll survive," she said, checking her nails. In the back seat, my older sister was scrolling through her phone. New acrylics. Designer bag in her lap. She didn't even look up. Dad just stared at the steering wheel like he wanted to disappear into it. They'd been telling me all week that money was tight, that things were complicated, that they had to make hard choices, But I already knew. They were choosing her. Again. Choosing her ballet recitals. Her prep school tuition. Her birthday trip to Paris. And I was the sacrifice, the extra mouth they didn't budget for. Mom leaned over and opened the car door from the inside. Come on, Maya. Don't make this dramatic. I stepped out slowly, bag in hand. The door shut behind me before I even reached the steps. No hug. No goodbye. No, we'll come back soon. They just drove away. I watched their silver SUV turn the corner and disappear like I had never existed. The woman with the clipboard put a hand on my shoulder. Let's get you settled in, sweetie. I nodded, but I didn't say a word. Because in that moment, I learned something most kids never have to. The people who are supposed to love you unconditionally sometimes don't. I was a ghost by the time I reached the front desk. A silent girl with big eyes and a garbage bag for a suitcase. No one from my family called that night. Or the next. Not that week. Not that month. Not that year. They had made their choice. But so would I. My name is Maya Rivers. And from wherever you're watching this video, stay with me. Because the girl they left behind, she didn't disappear. She learned to build an empire out of everything they threw away. I used to think love meant staying quiet. That if I didn't complain, didn't ask for too much, didn't cry when things were unfair, they'd see me. I was wrong. From the beginning, my sister Amelia was the headline. The golden child, top of her class, trained in ballet, dressed like catalog ad. And I was the footnote, her younger sister Maya always said with a shrug. When Amelia got straight A's, they framed the report card. When I did, well, you're only in 7th grade. Let's see if it sticks. She got braces, a tutor, a custom closet. I got hand-me-downs and lectures about not being a burden. One day, I overheard Mom on the phone. She was talking to my aunt, laughing. Maya is sensitive. She always thinks she's being left out. She'll grow out of it. But I didn't grow out of it. I grew through it, each year a little more invisible, each win smaller in their eyes, each need just a little too much. They called it tough love. They said it built character. What it built was silence. I remember coming home with a certificate from school, most determined. It was nothing big, but it was something. I held it out at the dinner table, hoping for a smile. Mom glanced up and said, "Is that for everyone?" Dad didn't even look. Amelia smirked. I got that in 5th grade. I folded the certificate and put it in a drawer. Never brought anything else home after that. But it wasn't just favoritism. It was something darker. Like they had decided early on who was worth betting on, and who was just extra weight. When Amelia turned 15, they threw her a full-on gala. Caterers, a string quartet, a rented hall. When I turned 12, they gave me a cupcake and said, "Don't blow all the candles at once." 2 weeks later, they left me in foster care because she needed them more. Those were Mom's words, delivered with a smile like she was being generous, as if abandoning your child was an act of love when it was done for the right sibling. And the worst part? For a while, I believed her. I thought maybe I was the problem. Maybe I wasn't lovable. Maybe Amelia really did need them more. But that belief? That was the last piece of them I ever carried. Because when people like that call it love, what they really mean is, you're only valuable if we say so. And the second you stop needing their validation, you become dangerous. The first night in foster care, I didn't cry. I thought I would. But there was something about the quiet, the unfamiliar sheets, the distant hum of someone else's television that made the grief settle into a dull, steady ache. Like my body had already adjusted to being unwanted. My new foster mom, Miss Callahan, was kind in a cautious way, the kind of woman who had seen too many kids come and go to get attached easily. She gave me my own room, a small space with pale yellow walls and a squeaky bed. "This is yours now," she said. I nodded, didn't speak, didn't believe her, but she didn't push. And slowly, without meaning to, I started breathing again. She cooked dinner every night. Simple food. No lectures. No forced smiles. Just presence. I got used to the routine. School. Chores. Homework. No birthday banners or ballet recitals. But also no smirks. No silence sharp enough to slice skin. I started working by 14. First at a corner store, then babysitting, then dishwashing. I saved every cent. No one was coming for me. So I built forward, step by step. I got through high school with no parties, no prom dress, no cheering crowd at graduation. But I graduated with honors, applied for scholarships, wrote essays late into the night, learned how to file taxes before I learned how to drive. College wasn't glamorous. It was a small in-state program with too many people and not enough parking. But it was mine. I studied business by day, cleaned offices by night, and sold custom-designed tote bags on Etsy for my dorm room. By my senior year, I had saved enough to take a risk. I turned my side hustle into a full-time plan. I didn't post about it, didn't tell Ms. Callahan until after the launch, didn't even consider telling my parents. They hadn't reached out in years. Not for holidays, not for birthdays, not even when I turned 18 and officially aged out of the system. But that silence, it stopped hurting. It started clearing space. Because as painful as it was to be forgotten, it gave me one rare gift. No one expected anything from me. No legacy to uphold. No image to protect. No hand-me-down dreams to chase. I had nothing, which meant I could build everything. And by the time my name was on a business license, by the time my brand started showing up on eco-boutique shelves, by the time strangers were wearing something I created, I realized something important. I wasn't surviving without them anymore. I was thriving because they were finally gone. The first time someone called me ma'am, I looked behind me. It was the UPS driver dropping off a bulk order of packaging for my business. He handed over 3 boxes and said, "Thanks, ma'am. Congrats on the growth." I stood there in my little sunlit workspace and just smiled, because for the first time, someone saw me not as a girl who was left behind, but as a woman who had built something. The brand started with tote bags, then reusable pouches, then eco-friendly planners, then collaborations. Within 3 years, I had a modest but loyal online following. I was still operating small, still doing my own bookkeeping, still folding shipping boxes at night. But I was profitable, debt-free, and registered as a real business in 3 states. I never changed my name, didn't hide, didn't shout either, just kept showing up. And as my business grew, something strange started happening. I began to get invited into spaces I once thought were locked to people like me. Small business panels, podcasts, trade expos, networking circles with designers and founders I used to admire from a screen. People introduced me as the girl who made it from nothing. They didn't know the half of it. I never shared the full story, never named names. But I didn't have to. I was building a life that spoke louder than any family legacy. And the best part? I wasn't doing it to prove them wrong. I was doing it because I had finally, quietly, learned how to believe in myself. Then one day, something came across my desk that stopped me cold. A struggling luxury retail startup, the kind that used to laugh at eco-conscious homemade brands like mine, was seeking new investment. Their numbers were tanking. Their leadership was fractured. They needed cash fast. And on the pitch deck under strategic advisors, I saw a name I hadn't read in years. Amelia Rivers. My sister. Apparently, life hadn't turned out quite as curated as she'd hoped. That's when it hit me. They were circling the drain. And I was one of the few investors in the room with the leverage to decide what happened next. I didn't rush. I didn't slam any doors. But I did lean in. Not to save them. To see what people do when the person they left behind is suddenly sitting at the head of the table. I didn't reach out. I didn't send an email. Didn't return the ones I received. But I read them. The first one came from a generic account. To whom it may concern, we are seeking potential investment partners to stabilize and rebrand our luxury platform during an upcoming relaunch phase. It was cold, corporate, desperate if you knew how to read between the lines. I knew. 2 weeks later, I got another. Different sender, different tone. Hi, Maya. I believe you, and I may have crossed paths before. I'm Amelia Rivers, currently advising on the Luxora project. We're in an exciting phase and exploring strategic investors aligned with our values. I stopped reading after that. Luxora. The same company that once denied a collaboration with me said my handmade products weren't brand appropriate. The same company my sister now worked for after her influencer path fizzled out, her brand sponsorships dried up, and her perfectly filtered life began to crack offline. They were broke, not struggling broke. Their lead investor pulled out. Their CEO quietly resigned. A legal dispute was brewing over misused funds. And my sister? Listed as creative advisor, but functioning more like a desperate mouthpiece. Pretending to hold a title when the company barely had walls. And me? I was one of the anonymous decision makers on the board reviewing their last chance funding request. They had no idea. Until the pitch call. They hosted it virtually. I kept my camera off. My name listed only as our Lane Ventures, the investment arm I had quietly built under a different name. Amelia presented. Her voice was practiced. Too bright. Too fast. She talked about redefining luxury and partnerships with sustainability-forward brands. I sat there, letting her sell a future she had once told me I'd never be part of. Then someone on the committee spoke up. There's concern about previous mismanagement. Can you speak to the misuse of marketing funds from Q1? She froze. Someone else added, we also flagged an academic credential discrepancy on your advisor's resume. It says Stanford, but we couldn't verify enrollment. I didn't speak. I didn't need to. I let the silence stretch. Let her squirm. After the call, a summary email was sent to all stakeholders. Luxora's funding request was officially declined. I watched the notification pop up on my phone, then turn it off and walked outside. The air smelled like rain. I didn't feel powerful. I felt done. Because this wasn't revenge. This was gravity. The golden ones had finally fallen. And I didn't have to push. All I had to do was stand where they left me and grow roots. The first knock came on a Tuesday. I had just finished packing orders when the intercom buzzed. Hi, it's Amelia. For a second, I thought I misheard it. Her voice was shaky, smaller than I remembered. I almost didn't answer. But curiosity? It's persistent. I buzzed her in and waited by the door. When I opened it, she was standing there with a paper bag of pastries, like we were friends catching up after brunch. Hey, she said, eyes darting around the doorway. Can I come in? I didn't move. Why? She paused. I just wanted to talk. She looked different. Designer clothes traded for something neutral. Clean face. No camera-ready glow. She was unraveling and trying hard not to show it. I know you probably hate me, she said, but things are hard right now. I didn't speak. She continued. Mom and Dad lost the house. Investments dried up. We're trying to figure things out. I thought maybe... There it was. The reason. I thought maybe you could help us, she finally said. She said us, like we were ever a we. I stepped out and gently closed the door behind me, leaving her outside on the mat. I'm sorry things are hard, I said. Truly. She looked relieved for a second, like maybe I was going to rescue her. But when I was 12, I continued, things were hard for me too. She looked away, and I didn't see any of you then. I was a kid, she muttered. I didn't understand. You understood enough to watch me be left behind, I said, and never once ask where I went. She flinched. I built everything I have without a safety net, I added. Now you want to borrow mine. I'm not asking for much, she said quiet. Just something to help us get through this. I reached into the mailbox beside the door and pulled out an envelope I'd prepared days ago. I handed it to her. Inside was a list of resources, housing support, job placement agencies, financial literacy programs. All real, all helpful. Start here, I said. It's what I did. Her eyes filled with tears. You're really not going to help? I am helping, I said, just not in the way you hoped. And before she could say anything else, I went back inside and locked the door. I leaned against it, closed my eyes, took a breath that felt 10 years long. It didn't feel triumphant. It felt clean, because healing isn't about proving you're better. It's about finally knowing you don't owe anyone the version of you they never bothered to believe in. The next day, I got a voicemail from my mother. It started with a sigh. Maya, I know we've had our differences, I'm not proud of how things went, but your sister told me she saw you, that you gave her some pamphlets. She made it sound like I handed over junk mail, not the same resources I had once used to survive. Look, your father and I, we made mistakes. We admit that, but we're still your family. We're reaching out now. Isn't that what matters? She paused, waiting for her own words to sound noble. They didn't. I just think if you're doing so well, you could maybe help us. Not forever. Just for now. You owe us that much. That part stung, not because I believed it, but because I knew she did. They really thought I owed them something. For the food they gave me until I turned 12. For the roof they folded over my head before they took it away. For the childhood they treated like a loan I was supposed to pay back with my future. I didn't respond. I didn't need to. Later that week, I got a text from my father. Short. Formal. We could really use your help. Your sister said you're doing well. We're proud of you. Proud of me. After ignoring every birthday. After walking away like I was someone else's problem. Now they were proud because they were desperate. I typed one line and hit send. You said I'd survive. I did. That doesn't mean I'm yours anymore. And then, without a second thought, I blocked their numbers. No ceremony. No warning. Just silence. The kind that protects. Not punishes. Because this wasn't a comeback story. It was a closing. Not a scream. Not a slap. Not revenge dressed as kindness. Just a quiet, clean goodbye. It's been a year since they came knocking. They haven't tried again. Maybe they got the message. Maybe not. But either way, it's no longer my story to worry about. This morning, I had coffee with Ms. Callahan, my foster mom. We sat in her tiny backyard garden. She brought out a mismatched mug and a plate of shortbread cookies, just like she did when I was 14 and trying not to cry over algebra. She still asks how the business is doing. Still brags about me like I'm her own. Still signs every birthday card with, "Love you like always." And now I believe her, because she showed up when it was hardest to love me. I fund her rent now. She doesn't ask. I just do it. Quietly. That's the thing about chosen family. You choose to show up. And they do too. I mentor young girls aging out of foster care now. Some of them think I'm lying when I say I used to sleep in a room with yellow walls and a trash bag for a suitcase. They laugh when I show them photos of my first tote bag design. But they listen closely when I say, you don't have to come from anything to become something. Every time I say it, I mean it more. The apartment I live in now isn't huge, but it has floor-to-ceiling windows that catch the sunrise just right. There's a wall covered in handwritten thank you notes from customers around the world. And on the top shelf sits one thing I keep just for me. That folded up, most determined certificate from 7th grade. The one no one celebrated. Except me. I look at it sometimes when I forget how far I've come. And on nights like this, when the wind is soft and the world is finally quiet, I write. Tonight's journal entry was short. They left me, but I didn't stay lost. I became my own rescue story. I don't dream of revenge anymore. I dream of peace, of rooms filled with people who don't need proof I belong, of love that doesn't come with terms and conditions. I wasn't their first choice, so I made myself mine, and I've never looked back.